Next game we're talking about is Hexen 2, which was nominated by @Cambert123 on Twitter. It was developed by Raven Software, published by id Software for the PC. Earliest release date and territory is August 31st, 1997 in the United States. Oh my god, I'm old. I am so old. 1997, this feels like yesterday. So this is a game that I believe it uses the Quake engine, does it not?
Yes, it does.
And it is the third game in the Heretic Hexen series?
That is the last one, actually. It is the fourth game.
Yeah, it killed it. So
yeah, was it one game? Really? I didn't know there was a...
What was the first game? Was it
Hexen? Hexens, right?
There's Heretic, which is there's Heretic, and then there's I had our friend Satenga tell me the chronology of this series, but I kind of forgot it already because it's crazy. I think there's Heretic, and then there is Hexen beyond Heretic, and then there's Heretic 2, and then there's Hexen 2, I think is the order of release.
Really? I did not know that.
There's 4 games in this series of 2 games, but also kind of 3 games because only 3 of them are connected or something. It's I mean, this is Hexen 2. That's the one we're playing. It's the only 3D one.
The way players at the time experienced it was there was Doom 2, there was Heretic, there was Duke Nukem 3D, and there was Quake and Quake 2. That's the way the chronology went. That's what games actually people
all
play.
The cool kids played Blood and Redneck Rampage.
Can't forget about Blood.
Mm-hmm.
Redneck
Rampage, yes.
I'm quite happy to forget about Redneck Rampage.
Look, I was there. I was at the epicenter of PC gaming, aka a little storefront establishment known as Cybercore. Like LAN games.
Wow. I love your Cybercore story.
Cybercore, and nobody played.
No, this is
Blood. Everybody was.
I know.
Cool
In my little
Cybercore.
My little neck of the woods down here in Australia, we played quite a bit of Blood and Duke 3D. Those were the 2 games that were.
Really?
Blood is so good.
I figured Australia at that time, you guys would still be playing like the paddle with the ball and the rubber band.
Yeah, stick paddle, mate.
Yeah, stick paddle. No, I'm sorry, Australia. I love you.
But no, I can't speak for all of Australia because Australia is large enough that regional things, people are like, well, we all did this. Yeah. It's like, no, we didn't. What are you talking about? You're crazy. Like half of Australia had Commodore 64s hanging out, and you find them in the trash and stuff. So you never know. But no, this side of things, the Hexen Heretic side, I didn't really see much of or hear much of. I think I distinctly remember seeing the Hexen 2 box at local game retailers. It's quite a distinctive box with the like creepy like looking Hexen 2 font with the big X and the guy in robe standing like in the light and stuff. 90s the video game right there.
I don't know anybody who played Hexen 2. I feel like if they were selling it anywhere, it was like, buy a copy of anything and get Hexen 2 for free.
I do seem to remember that it was the kind of game that sat there and just slowly was given more and more pricing stickers as they sort of
Derek, what were you going to say?
I actually, for a short time in my life, had a PC and was like, could play like games like Hexen 2 and Quake, and for kind of a hot minute, I was a PC gamer like that. I remember just never really getting into Hexen 2, and then kind of looking back into it for our discussion here, I was like, I remember why I did not like this game. Why did not do much for me.
So
it's like Quake, except you punch things.
Well, I was going to say it's like Quake, except you take out the things that are good about Quake and release it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, people that love Hexen, and especially Hexen 2, but I did not like this. I'm like...
I've never met a single person who likes Hexen 2.
I looked at the Steam reviews. Some people like this. I'm not... Like,
That's true.
reviewed...
Those are oddly positive. I guess the only...
And does pretty well on Metacritic, and, it did pretty well at the time. The kind of game that got, in the 80s, slightly above the 7 out of 10 range, so people actually... were getting into it. I did like the Steam reviews because a lot of the Steam reviews are stuff like, the levels aren't very good, the game is confusing, it's not very balanced, I didn't really enjoy it, positive. I was like, hold on.
I think
slow down.
There's kind of a halo effect from Heretic. And because Heretic was pretty good. As I recall, I haven't played it in probably 23 years.
That's the catch here.
But I remember not caring at all about Hexen 2, or even Hexen for that matter. I did like Heretic. I'd say like the thing about the whole conceit of this series is like, it's like Doom or Quake, except you're like a magician and you can do magic stuff and you got magic powers. And
well, unless you pick one of the other classes and then you can just hit things.
But you don't really, it doesn't do enough with that concept. And when you get another game that we played for this podcast before we were ranking games, Clive Barker's The Undying, which is a oddly inventive game that takes a lot of the same concepts and does something with it, because it's a game where you have guns and can shoot, but you can also have a separate set of controls that you can use to do magic spells and stuff. And if you're playing the game right, you're constantly trading off back and forth between shooting things with your guns and casting spells. And it's really weird and interesting and
well,
kind of
Hexen
brilliant.
2
It's not a great game, but it's pretty...
This is kind of less innovative because it's taking its influences from Doom and Quake and those sort of games and trying to, spin those off a little bit. So, you get things like, you have like your standard inventory of items that you use the brackets to cycle through, and then you just hit enter to activate different, like, pretty basic things like healing and, like knock enemies away and stuff. And yeah, it's a game with mouse controls and there's no mouse look. So that kind of sends... Hey guys, we got this great fully 3D engine, it's called Quake, but you can look around in 3D and it's really great, you can use the mouse and everything.
But don't look around or you will be killed immediately.
Yeah, so they basically ripped the mouse out of the game and you have to use like page down and delete to look up and down.
It's so bad. And you gotta like jump, like the way the jump function is like mapped to, I mean, I know you can remap the key.
Yeah, you can remap it, we're not like...
But is there anything interesting about this game that should be mentioned before we rank it wherever?
It's weird for me when I think about the good things that Hexen 2 does. I think like, well, isn't that kind of what all of the Hexen Heretic games do? Like these are basically like, it's a really nice Doom mod, but instead of shotguns, it's scepters, And I think that's cool. Instead of it being hell and heavy metal, it's, folklore and, Lord of the Rings. And it's like, there's an audience for that. I think that's fine. And sort of the open world aspects of like the first Hexen, there's some neat stuff kind of going on there. But even in that pantheon of the Hexen Heretic games, I'm not really the best person to answer this question, but I get the sense that Hexen 2 is, even among those games, not very good.
Just kind of bland.
Yeah, like it's part of a lineage. And there are better games than the other four that are, this may be on the lower tier of those 4 games that make up the Hexen Heretic.
So the coolest thing about this one, I think, is that instead of just being medieval, which is the most distinct thing about these, they are hack and slashes as such, as opposed to shoot 'em ups, which is,
but not in like a unique way, like Ultima Underworld. It's like in a it's like Quake,
it's like you've got the chainsaw or fist in Doom, and that's like your main weapon for the whole game kind of deal. But no, what they do is this one does start to spin off to interesting locations. I think that like the later levels are like set in Egypt and some other sort of like civilizations and things, which is that's pretty cool if you're mostly used to I don't know, like sci-fi or something that a lot of first-person shooters were doing at the time. So that's that in itself is pretty cool. And the hub world approach is interesting. You've got a core hub world, and then you bounce off to different like levels within the hub world, and you collect items and objects in those in order to do things in the hub world to progress your game. But the actual progression is like, you have to get this obscure item in this place, and then dump it in this obscure thing in that place, and then you have to find this one wall which looks different to all the others, and it's hidden in a corner, and that wall will break, and then you'll find the thing to kin to. It's like, huh?
Yeah, I mean, if the game were more fun and better built, that kind of thing would probably really stand out as like, oh, that's a pretty cool idea. They took stuff that, the kind of things that like adventure games and Metroid type games and other things were doing at the time, like, oh, they translated to FPS games, and somebody would have done it eventually, but you got to do it in a game that's actually fun.
Yeah, they didn't quite get there yet. And there were cool things like early on, there's a catapult and a locked door, and you can, the way you get through it is you jump into the catapult and launch yourself over the wall in the catapult.
Mm-hmm.
And that's cool stuff.
And you know to do that because there's a sheep in it, right?
Yeah, and the sheep gets shot over before you, and you're like, all right, cool, here we go.
Oh, I know what to do here.
Yeah.
I'm going to stand on that catapult. Here's the funny thing about these, I think all the Heretic Hexen games are like this, but there's a lot of canyons and a lot of castles built within the canyons, which is kind of like the last place you would ever build a castle. If you think about it, like you would build a castle on the top side of the canyon, like above the canyon.
Yeah, so you can
go down
stuff
into the canyon. It's like, I built this castle, and it's like your enemies are like, okay, we're going to dump these rocks on you. No.
Think this through.
I was such a fool to build my castle in the canyon. I should never have done that.
3 generations to build this castle.
This, so many of my serfs died building this castle in the canyon. What did I do?
Oh, my serfs! No!
Oh, I was such a fool.
So, yeah, basically, I guess we can move on to ranking with this one. But
might as well.
What I'm saying is a little bit like, because we talked about this very recently, the original Jedi Knight game.
Let's say that, yeah.
This one feels again like it came out in 97, so it was just kind of enough time where people weren't really sure what you were going to do with first-person shooters. We weren't really sure, so everyone, like a lot of developers were just kind of throwing stuff in a pot and seeing whether it worked out or not. And then in the next couple of years, you'd have stuff like Half-Life and the Unreal line of games, and they would be like, oh, yeah.
I think Half-Life was 97.
If it was, it would have been later than this one by just a few months, because I think the release date was a little later.
But 97 was a crazy year for video games.
There's a lot of stuff happening.
98, my bad. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My bad. It was before Half-Life. So, yeah, I think really what we can say is like what this game does differently. It doesn't quite do very well. And the stuff that it does that sets it apart from other shooters of the time is still maybe done better in the other games in its ilk.
It really isn't that ambitious.
Because when you have something like, because I mentioned before, like Duke 3D and Blood and the Build Engine games and stuff, they manage to present much more interesting worlds with kind of more interesting puzzles. They don't quite have the sprawling 3D-ness that this obviously has because it's built on Quake, but they just feel a lot better to play in most ways. Whereas this one's just kind of a little bit more frustrating. I do appreciate that most of the projectiles are projectiles in this game so that you can actually dodge things to an extent so that you don't feel like... Yeah, because if there was too many hit scan things, using melee weapons would be just awful, but... I wouldn't put this one too highly, so...
I would put it below... I'm going to say below Mega Man 02 or below Glover, which are right next to each other. Because I feel like I feel like Glover's actually better in a weird way.
Well, as I said,
like actually underneath that is Gomorrah Speed, which is like a kind of a unique game.
You can't get away from the Ball Centipede.
No, you can't. There's Altered Beast, which is right underneath that, which is a trash game, but is really beautiful for its time.
The arcade version of Altered Beast is pretty good. Genesis
that's the one we ranked. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. I would say. I also just want to interject real quick. Y'all got Nightshade way too low. Nightshade on the NES needs to be a lot higher. But I digress. Yeah, I really feel like we don't want to put. Heck, I don't think Hexen needs to be below King Crusher. I already forgot what the hell that one was called.
Hakayo!
Yeah, that one.
No, I think that's fair. It doesn't have to go quite that low. I think the only real big problem with Hexen 2 is that you had better first-person shooters released before it that year, and then you had incredibly better ones released the next year. So it was like, all right, cool.
Right.
There's something about a middle-tier game that is worse than the worst game.
This is the problem we have on the show, is that it's really, like, games tend to go kind of on the top third of the list or in the bottom third, and the middle is just kind of whatever ends up there.
Yeah.
Because you don't think about things in those terms. I would put it, okay, so I think what Derek's saying is it's got to go above Nightshade. I would put it above Riven because whatever. And,
I wouldn't put it above Riven. No, that's where I would.
Really?
Riven overflows with effort, and they miss it by trying to be too grandiose for their own good. This game doesn't feel too grandiose for its own good. It just feels like
I would Hexen 2 is at least it's kind of fun, whereas like Riven is the anti-fun. It is not
fun. Is Nightshade? You are crazy. Nightshade's a fun game. It's hilarious.
Derek, don't embarrass me on the internet.
Oh,
too late. You shouldn't have.
I have no problem putting it below Nightshade. I barely know anything about Nightshade, so cool.
I know that Satenga really likes it, but Satenga ain't here right now.
Oh.
Well, okay, all right. But it's got to be in that range. Can I at least say it's got to go below Tale of the Sun? Okay,
of course, you can say it's got to go below Tale of the Sun because it's going below Riven and probably Nightshade.
Okay, all right.
How about above the New Zealand story, or the Kiwi craze, as I've known it?
Yeah.
Right there, I guess. Altered Beast.
Yeah, I mean, Altered Beast at least sticks in the culture in a way that Hexen 2 and can't possibly hope to.
Hexen 2 is
have
like...
a rise from your grave moment. It doesn't, that rise from your grave will live on for a long time.
And welcome to your doom.
Welcome to your doom. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing like that in Hexen 2.
Hexen 2 is really just riding the coattails of the sort of the Heretic franchise, and it's just the Quake engine, but
which is like a B+ franchise.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, okay, that's where it goes. So
Done.
Hexen 2, which may have a more to the title, but I don't care. Colon like the bloodening or whatever.
I think Hexen 2
got to be more to the title. It's just Hexen 2.
1 was called Beyond Heretic, but I think Hexen 2, lame name. Also lame name.
Hexen 2, even we don't care anymore.
They should have put an extra X in there and just called it Hexen, with like 2 X's.
Hexen,
That would have been so cool. No.
Extreme
And then
Hexen.
that would leave room for the porn parody.
Yeah.
Right? Always got to be ready for that.
Triple XN.
Triple Xen.
Triple XN over here.
Ice Cube makes a cameo for no reason.
He was in the
Besides that he was in
the
Hexen
second
2.
one without Vin Diesel. We've been over
Sam
this.
Jackson shows up to collect a paycheck and promptly leaves.
Pull the plug on it. This one's ranked.
This one's done. It goes. I forget immediately where we put. It goes,
above
below
the New Zealand story.
It goes below. Okay, it goes below Altered Beast and above the New Zealand story. Hexen 2. Let's never speak of this again.
Wait, should we put it
David.
next to X-Men so all the X's are together? X-Men and Hexen 2 just hanging out?